The other thing that I wanted to take a look at, honestly, was the whole FTC thing. This is like a whole thing, okay? This is a whole thing that has been on the internet for only like a couple days, honestly. Kind of like the TikTok ban. I mean, the TikTok ban had some buildup, but then this FTC thing, I don't know if it had any buildup. It just ended up being something that was dropped like a bomb. And I know that one, the FTC thing, it affects the US because FTC is a US organization. Two, it was like technically resolved in a way because Cognosphere already like released an announcement about it. What and like is wondering what the heck all of that is. They're like, okay, sorry. It wasn't like, okay, we're sorry, here's the fine. They were like, okay, I don't think you're very accurate in your claims, but here's the fine. But FTC is Federal Trade Commission, protecting America's consumers. So basically, it's that branch of government that is, consumers consume in America. So they had this whole thing where they were like, Genshin Impact game developer will be banned from selling loot boxes to teens under 16 without parental consent to settle FTC charges. Game developer Cognosphere. And no, they have to say Cognosphere because Cognosphere is the global brand of Hoyoverse allegedly unfairly marketed loot boxes to children that obscured real costs and misled all players about the odds of obtaining prizes. So, this came out on January 17. Okay, that came out on January 17. And it kind of became like the talk of the town a little bit. And then like yesterday, the other day, January 18, Cognosphere statement on US FTC settlement. So I'm just looking at the screenshot that Genshin Update posted. This is like an independent account that has been very consistent. Cognosphere, the distributor of Genshin Impact, reached a settlement agreement with FTC to strengthen and increase transparency around our parental consent and virtual currency practices. Animation style games and shows are well received by global audiences and players across various ages. Genshin Impact is a popular free to play anime style game designed for older teens and adults. While we believe many of the FTC's allegations are inaccurate. Okay, so this is the part where Cognosphere was kind of like, okay, we don't really think you're right, but anyway. We agreed to this settlement because we value the trust of our community and share a commitment to transparency for our players. Under the agreement, we will introduce new age gate and parental consent protections for children and young teens and increase our in-game disclosures around virtual currency and rewards for players in the US in the coming months. That was their response. Which is honestly like kind of a funny in your face response. Like, yeah, we don't really believe you, but we're going to just settle this anyway because we don't want this to be a big issue. And, maybe settling the fine isn't even that big of a deal to Cognosphere with like all the money that they have. Just saying, like, I don't even know how bad of a fine that is relative to what they can afford to pay. Exactly, like 20 million doesn't seem like a lot to Hoyo. So it was it was a very fast settlement, like a very fast transaction. Now, if you read the entirety of that findings, you can clearly see that they're nitpicking because why would you put Hoyo on blast but not their local devs like EA and Ubisoft? So, like, listen, there's a lot that can be said about the actual FTC report. I brought it up here, but sorry, this isn't the full report. The full report is actually a paper under the proposed order. Anyway, so I did see like screenshots of the full report, and I did see people criticizing FTC for frankly sounding silly in some of the things they were saying. But here's the thing, right? Like, you can't deny that gacha is built to addict people. Any which way, even if they have to resort to like nitpicking, or if they use like some silly claims that people will try to easily argue back against, right? Accustomed to the gacha system, because I think a lot of us are already accustomed to what Genshin does. I think a lot of us are already aware of like the risks of gacha and the risks of Genshin. So for us, when we read some of the things that FTC is saying like are misleading or are obscuring or are like false or things like that or are dangerous to children. Like for us, because we're already used to these risks and we've been in this for so long, like I don't want to say we're gotcha pilled, but we're like accustomed to it, and we're accustomed to it because we understand the risks that comes with engaging in a game like this. And for many of us, we can just ignore that risk. Like we can just, sorry, not ignore the risk, but we understand it enough that we don't not susceptible to it as possible. Does that make sense? That we as adults, I assume we're adult because you guys better be like at least over 13 in chat. You cannot be on Twitch and under 13. But especially those of us over 18, I know that here it's mentioning teenagers, especially under the age of 16, that they are susceptible. Yeah, they are susceptible. But for us who are older and know better, and maybe have been in the gacha, like playing gacha games for longer, we look at some of FTC's claims and we're like, yeah, that's obvious. But no, to people who are younger and people who know less, it's not. Like, it's dangerous. Okay, so like the point I'm trying to make here is really that the risks are real. It starts to look a little silly when you have like a government branch trying to break down those risks and even put words like loot boxes and things into, vocabulary that to us who play Genshin, like we don't even think of these as loot boxes. Most of the time we say like microtransactions or like in-game purchases and things like, and rate up banners and probability and gacha and pity and 50, like things like that, just to see like an official investigation of this and try to put it into words, like some of the risks that like young people are being exposed to. But then to us, these seem obvious. These seem like things we already know. These seem like things that we should already be aware of. It's just that younger people are not. It ends up with a situation where I see that people do try to like criticize, I guess, the action of it, but I think that the spirit of it has merit. They could have done a lot better job to target the real core problem. And that is true. So it's like you can be critical of Genshin and gacha as a whole and be critical of FTC and what they are trying to do and how they went about it. I think that it becomes a false dichotomy if you think that just because someone's criticizing FTC for this, that they are defending gacha games or they're defending Genshin. Because, unless that they actually say or it really shows that they are defending Genshin, like you can very much in the same breath criticize FTC and criticize gacha games as a whole. Or gacha practices as a whole. Gacha practices as a whole, they do have risks, they do have dangers. And I think a lot of us can agree that all of those put together, especially for those who are susceptible to it, it can be addicting and it's predatory. But then we can also very much criticize like how FTC tried to go about this and how they appeared to be like selective about it. And as many people are criticizing, like Genshin is not the only perpetrator of such allegedly unfair marketing or like risks to children and things like that. So I think that that is kind of that's that aspect of it. Just how on both ends, like between gacha games and FTC, there are like issues on both parts. The core problem is not easily determined since it's still not clear the objective detrimental aspects of gacha games. As any human activity, scientific studies take time. It is going to take time, and I think that like there is some merit in trying to be proactive about it because there are going to be cases of risk. There are going to be risks overall, like risks of addiction, especially when money is involved and things like that. Even League has gacha now. Target Riot Games, FTC, I dare you. So yeah, like it's like a lot of people are criticizing like the selectiveness of FTC's settlement. They're like, why are you only doing this to Genshin / Cognosphere when there are so many other games that like do this thing? And like those are fair. Those are fair criticisms. And it's also a fair criticism to look at Genshin and say, yeah, that this is not something that children should even have access to or be exposed to. And then you also have, and then that forces you to think about like the whole parenting responsibility, which is also a whole other can of worms. This emphasizes Genshin Impact deceived children's, teens, and other players, but they specifically focused on children's and teens. And they say things about children's online privacy protection. So it really is trying to center its claim around the fact that young people are susceptible to the risks even more. And they are, like that's true. But then you also have to question at some point, like, why do these young people have access to Genshin when I know that it's been pointed out that in Genshin's terms and conditions, like, if you look through it, there are a lot of disclaimers about parental consent. It's normal to have those disclaimers of parental consent because, on the pessimistic side, like, if you look at it most pessimistically, games put parental consent things there because they have to. Like, they have to legally cover their assets. It would be really, really bad if a game, especially a gacha game, released itself without anything in the fine print or the terms and agreements and conditions that didn't involve parental consent. Games really need to do that, you know? And most online products that you purchase, whether it's like a website subscription or any online content, most of the time they do have like parental consent clauses in the fine print. And legally, like they have to do that. When you think about that aspect of it, which honestly, I don't know if I have the merit to actually speak on that because I'm not a parent. I was a child. I have parents, but I don't know anything about parenting. I know that it's hard, but I also would agree with the sentiment that if kids are somehow spending or swiping on a game, especially a gacha game, then the parents do need to do something about it. Because that's just not healthy, and a child being a child, they are still under the responsibility of their parents. Maybe just no microtransactions. No micro. That is like the entire business model of gacha games. So, like, I would agree. It would be great if microtransactions weren't a thing. That would make things ultimately less risky, like less susceptible to spending a lot. But then you would also have people who do like the idea of a free to play game, and then it's up to them whether they want to do those microtransactions and all that. So it's like it's not something that I would give any one option to, because it's like if you want a game where there aren't microtransactions, those usually come in the form of games where you just purchase it outright. Like you buy the game one time buy and then there's nothing else in it. And that is what gaming models have been for a very long time. And then when like developers started releasing free to play games, but oh, there's a catch. There are in-game purchases and microtransactions, and that's going to like help fund them and stuff. Then it's a different model, and some people actually prefer that model, and not just because it's addicting, but because it starts out as free to play. Do you think South Korea's law that games need your social security number work? I don't know if I would want to give a game my social security number. Yeah, no, I don't know. Like it's already a lot if a game ever asks for your credit card number for, or if you ever give your credit card number to a game just to purchase things, but like social security, I don't know about that. I think that the best case scenario with regards to the whole FTC thing is that they actually do start cracking down, or at least interrogating the other companies that do have similar business practices or share the same things that FTC is criticizing Genshin for. Because then at least it would be like, yeah, they're consistent. Like, at least they're being consistent. At least they're not just being selective and exclusionary, right? That would actually show that they're committed to the spirit of interrogating that transgression or interrogating that danger and trying to really protect children instead of making people think that they're just trying to target one game or one developer. So, but what are the chances of that happening? I don't know. I'm also not American. I don't have a history of how consistent or trustworthy or good FTC is at this kind of thing. But for me, if that ever were to happen here in the Philippines, oh my God, actually, never mind. I'm not going to bring that up. Like, the Philippines is, like, once again, another can of worms. Um, and earlier, Game Addict did say that in Japan, there are stricter gacha laws to try to curb, like, the gacha risk and to protect consumers. And so, I don't know if that's something that's going to be legislated in the US to, like, in Cognosphere's effort to work with the FTC on things, or to, I don't know, what was their phrasing? We will introduce new age gate and parental consent protection for children and young teens and increase our in-game disclosures around virtual currency. So it sounds like they're just going to put more warnings, and then they're going to ask for more confirmations that the child has parental consent, or they're just going to ask for parental consent more explicitly and more upfront. That's what it sounds like. But I don't know if, like, there's going to be an effort to perhaps legislate, like, stricter laws around gaming and marketing and loot boxes and in-game transactions and gacha and things like that, like what Game Addict said about Japan. So it's a weird issue. I think that in a way it's kind of long overdue. I'm kind of surprised that this hasn't happened sooner. That a government body hasn't, unless it has, I might just not have seen it, or it might not have been on this scale. Especially, no, I mean for America specifically, right? Because other countries such as Japan already have legislation trying to protect against, like, certain gacha risks. Did it happen with Fortnite? Like, I am curious what else they did this with. But I guess just the mere fact that FTC released this and then it ended up making waves. And people were talking about it. It's a conversation, certainly. I know that people have been talking about it and, like, podcasting about it or just discussing it on their streams and stuff. And I kind of just wanted to bring it up because, like, as someone who regularly plays the game, and by playing the game, I know that I am promoting the game to people, and I know that some of my audiences might be on the younger side. The gacha as a whole, it has risks. It is in its business model predatory, and it's dangerous to those who are susceptible to addiction. This is like a good opportunity as someone who, yeah, plays the game a lot and shows people that I am playing the game, and in a way promoting that you still have to be careful. And I think it's something that people should continuously, like, talk about or just remember in the back of their minds. Like, it's not meant to take away any enjoyment. It's just meant to help other people be conscious about it, because yeah, like, Genshin is a fun game, and I would argue that it's one of the more accessible games, but you know, people do fall prey to things, and that can be dangerous. And I just want people to remember that there's always, like, a dark side to things, or there's always, like, a dangerous side to things. So I am looking forward to how this is going to, I wouldn't say resolve, because technically, like, Cognosphere and FTC, like, resolved it in Cognosphere's statement. But I'm looking forward to how this is going to, like, spark future conversations, and if FTC is going to actually, like, follow up and crack down on other companies and other games that, you know, share similar practices or share similar characteristics, and just try to show that, oh no, we weren't just going for Cognosphere, we're actually going to go for everyone else as well. And then that's going to be interesting. But it's also going to be interesting if they don't do that, because then their bias is going to be really obvious. You think it's just a workaround solution for Hoyo? Yeah, exactly. Like, the 20 million is nothing to Hoyoverse. That's why they settled it so quickly. That's why. That's why they made the statement so quickly. Like it literally just came out the next day. Because 20 million is nothing. All they need to do to comply is pay the settlement and add more in-game warnings. So it really is nothing to them. So yeah, that's that.